Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be building a retaining wall using railroad ties. Now this is a really simple, easy way to build a retaining wall. It looks great when it's finished and it's really rugged as well. So stick around and I'll show you guys how to do this. Now, a couple weeks ago, I poured a concrete slab underneath our porch, and to do this, I had to dig out about 1.5 feet of dirt under here, and then pour a 4-inch slab up on top of that. And now the retaining wall that was here is no longer any good. The bottom of the retaining wall stops about 6 inches before the concrete slab. Some of these railroad ties are still in pretty good shape, so I may reuse a few of these, but I'm going to need a couple more in order to put an extra row underneath all of this. So the first step with building this retaining wall is going to be digging out the dirt where the retaining wall is going to go. So I need to have a perfectly level base for the first railroad tie to go down onto. That's the most important one. If that base is not level or if it is uneven, it's going to cause the whole retaining wall to lose stability and possibly end up leaning. So I'm going to dig this down and take several loads of dirt out of here and make sure that I have a nice level base at the bottom, and it's going to be just below the bottom of the slab right next to this. Now you may have noticed I just put a couple sheets of plywood down over top of the concrete here. It's been several weeks since I've poured this. It's definitely strong enough to support any weight I put on here. I just wanted to protect it a little bit just in case my digging bar misses and hits the concrete slab or the shovel misses. I don't want to chip that or ruin it in any way. And it also protects from the red clay that we have here from staining the concrete slabs. So that's a quick tip. If you have a few scrap pieces of plywood laying around while you're working around concrete, you can protect it a little bit by throwing those down first. Now I've dug down about as far as I need to go now. I'm going to put one of the railroad ties down in the bottom, the very first one, and see how that sits in here and make sure that it's level. Now don't be afraid to take that railroad tie back out if it doesn't sit perfectly level or if it rocks around at all. You need to make sure that this is going to sit down perfect and doesn't move around at all. Because that very first one, like I said before, is the base. It's the foundation of the wall. If it's leaning, the whole wall is going to be leaning. You need to make sure that you get this one perfectly level and set up where it needs to go before you build off of that. Now the second one will go in, and same with this. I'm going to make sure that this isn't rocking around at all. It's going to be perfectly level and that the two are lined up, and make sure that there's no gap in between these two when they're butted up against each other like that. So you can see here it wasn't sitting level, had to take it back out, and I'm going to dig down a little bit more and make sure that this is sitting just right before I put it back in. Now, a quick tip with these railroad ties, they're super heavy, so if you want them to stop rocking around a little bit and maybe compress the dirt underneath, you can lift those up and just let the weight of the railroad tie drop back down onto the dirt, and that will hammer it back down and maybe even level it out so it doesn't rock anymore. You can do sort of the same thing by using a sledgehammer or a heavy digging bar to hammer down on those and help them level out and set down on the dirt like they're supposed to. So now I'm going to start building the second row of the retaining wall. And this row I'm going to start pinning down through the first row and into the ground with long stakes, pinning these two rows together and to the ground so that they don't move or go anywhere. Now there can be a lot of weight on these retaining walls, so you want to make sure that you pin these in place and make sure that it's not going to over time start leaning and falling over. I have seen several of these retaining walls using railroad ties. Either they haven't pinned them together or haven't done a good job doing so, and eventually they fall over and it causes a huge mess. So this is the first railroad tie I need to cut. If you need to cut these, a chainsaw works really well for this. It kills your chain. You'll need to sharpen it for sure after this, but it does a really good job cutting these. So I'm going to take this and cut this off, leaving a perfect gap for a railroad tie to anchor this wall to the ground so that it doesn't lean. So I'm going to have a railroad tie going 90 degrees from the wall, pinned down into the ground 4 feet from the wall. So if this leans at all, it's going to have to yank that stake that I'm putting down into the ground and the railroad tie that's going to be buried out of the ground and pull it towards the concrete slab. So it's perfect for an anchor and holds it in place. Now this wall isn't very high. At the highest point it's about 2.5 feet, and it slopes down from there gradually to nothing at the end. So I don't need a huge anchor post down 90 degrees from the wall. Now if you have a 3 or 4 foot tall wall, you're going to want to put a longer piece in here, maybe even a full railroad tie to anchor it about every other railroad tie, and make sure that you really anchor this to the bank that you're retaining. Now also, as a rule of thumb, you're going to want to offset the seams or joints in this retaining wall. Now these railroad ties are going to be all pinned together. Each row I'm going to be pinning down into the one before, and so that's locking all of them together. If you have two seams that are going to fall at the same exact point or even about a foot off, that's going to cause a huge weak point in this wall. So basically you want the seams to land halfway on the railroad tie on the next wall above it, so that it's holding about 4 feet on either side of the seams, locking everything together, and it's going to hold really well that way. Now for the stakes or pins that I've been talking about, I'm using 1/2-inch rebar, and I'm going to be cutting these at 4 feet long for the first 2 rows to go down through 2 rows into the ground for about 2 feet. And that really anchors everything together. After that, I'm going to be using about 1.5 foot long pieces that's going to be anchoring the next row down to the one right below it. So you don't have to go super long with those pins, just long enough to go through 2 rows and hold everything together. Now you can see here I've got 3 rows now on the retaining wall. Here's the anchor post going into the ground about 4 feet into the bank. I have a long pin going down through that one at the end of the 4x4, and then a pin right at the wall where it comes into the wall. I have it all pinning together right there as well. So basically with these pins, I'm putting them about every 4 feet, or at the very least 1 on each end of the railroad tie. More than that is actually better, and rebar isn't that expensive, so it is probably worth it to buy a little bit extra and put a few more pins in and make sure that everything is held together really well. Now once you get it up past that anchoring post, you can start backfilling this in. It's all set to go. I need to build 1 more row on top of this, but I can start filling this in behind the wall and seeing how it's going to look. Now you can see this is the last piece. It's going to be level or a little bit higher than the ground at the highest point, and it slowly tapers down from there, so that's why I have the railroad ties slowly stepping down. I want it to follow pretty close to the grade of the ground on the other side of the retaining wall. It'd look a little silly to have this tall wall going all the way across. It doesn't need to be there, so I just slowly tapered it down as I went down the hill. Now I'm going to put in a few stakes, and if you notice on the top rows of these railroad ties, I'm just going to tie them together and hold that top one down a little bit better by bending that rebar over. After I get down in about 2 inches left on the rebar, I'm going to bend that over, and that really pulls the top row down. And I'll show you in just a second what that looks like a little bit closer up, and you can just hammer it right down into the wood after you bend it over. It hides itself pretty well and you won't even notice that. Alright, that's basically the wall finished. I'm going to backfill this in, make sure that it's level on the back side of this, and then I'm going to spread some grass seed over top. Wherever there's an anchor post going into the ground, it's going to disturb quite a big area of dirt, so I'm going to spread some seed over that and put some hay, and within a couple weeks the grass will be grown back up in here and look really nice and cover up all this dirt. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. Tried to make this one helpful for you guys if you're looking into building a DIY retaining wall. This is a great way to do it and rather inexpensive as far as retaining walls go. So I hope this one was helpful. Thanks guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button down below if you like this video. Also, I have a huge plan for a video when I reach 10,000 subscribers. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, I'm getting really close, so hit that subscribe button and get me a little bit closer to that goal. Thanks so much guys, you're awesome. I'll see you in the next one.